what I wanted to speak to you a little bit about is conceptions of masculinity.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think you've been criticized with that as well, like toxic masculinity.
Supposedly, yeah. Which is such a vague term. It's almost like the community guidelines.
What do you think they mean by that?
Well, it's almost like the community guidelines of these social media companies, right? They give this stupid definition of a term, which basically can be applied to anybody and anything willy-nilly, deciding whether they like you or not. It's very vague. It's not solid. What they're trying to say is that you're overly masculine and that some of the traits which are innate side of you as a man are somehow now bad for society or for other people, which is absolutely insane to even try and conceptualize, because it's asinine and it's childish, because like anyone with a brain understands that there are certain scenarios in life where particular qualities are completely applicable and permissible, and there's certain scenarios when they're not. To sit and say it's toxically masculine for men to be violent is stupid, because there are scenarios in life where you need a man to be violent. If someone breaks into your house, or if you go to war, or if you call a police officer. So it's not a matter of, a certain subset of masculine qualities being labeled negative, because these qualities exist because we've needed them for a very long time, and I argue we still need them today.
Only when it interferes with their interest.
And only when it interferes with their interest. It's kind of funny. I was arguing with a feminist, like I've done a bunch. And she was talking about toxic masculinity, and she was talking about the idea that men are innately violent and how that's bad. And I said, you think that's bad because you're living in an extremely privileged society and a very privileged life. But I'll tell you that that's not bad, because you, even in and of yourself, may not know this, but you like the idea of men being violent. Because let's say I lost my mind right now, or let's say an intruder broke in and threatened you physically.
Yeah, exactly.
You would call a man to be violent for you. You'd call the police and say, please be violent to protect me. You believe in violence very much. So for you to sit there and say, oh, that violence is toxically masculine, but you call a toxically masculine man when the trouble comes, shows that the whole idea in and of itself is hypocritical and it's garbage and it's stupid. And what they're trying to do is brainwash people into thinking that if you stand up for yourself, or if you are true to the innate way we were built, the things that are inside of us when we're born, that there's something wrong with you. They want you confused. They want you to sit and go, I'm a man, and what's happening around me I think is unfair, and it makes me feel unhappy about it, and I want to stand up and talk and fight against it. They want to convince you that that's wrong and you're a bad person for wanting to defend your ideas. And I don't think that's the case. It's simply the absolute opposite, in fact.
Absolutely. And the thing is, a lot of people will think that, this idea of a man is just simply that our idea of a man, or the Islamic, say, for example, idea of a man is just this violent creature. The truth is, like you said, violence is just an integral part, or the ability, capacity to do it in situations where there's a need for it, is just one part of the puzzle. Like, for example, the Prophet Muhammad, one really interesting thing, we know he had 9 wives at one time, which is very difficult to make. You can probably...
bro, 9's a lot.
9 at one
Nine's
time.
a lot.
And they're consistent relationships. It's not like divorce and marriage. It's like you're actually living with these. So 9 at one time. And then that's one thing. And then he had 6 children, all of which died in his lifetime. Wow. Only one of them survived afterwards. So he had to live with the grief of that. His wife died at his time as well. He had to live with the grief of that. He loved his first wife, Khadija, who was older than him. She died. And so he had to live with that grief. He had to live with the grief of his uncles. And so he dealt with that. We've got narrations of him crying when his son died. But what did he do? He didn't just, cry and that's it, give up. He cried, and then he went to war the next day. He cried, and then he went down a sermon the next day. He felt the grief, but then he had 19 wars that he participated in.
Wow.
And it wasn't just, these are not wars that he told other people to do while he sat in some air-conditioned place. He went and actually involved himself in these wars. He was fighting, he died in one of those wars, so he was engaging in war. He was the leader of a polity. He had 9 wives at one time, all managing all that. He prayed half of the night. So imagine, like you said, 4 hours. The Prophet Muhammad may have prayed for that long, like actually praying for that long. And that's an incredibly difficult thing to do. His children died. He was directing the people. I mean, if you really think about it from a KPI perspective, key performance indicators, for 1,400 years, people have been following the teachings of this man, from the most grandiose of things to the most minuscule of things. I mean, this is influence. And even Pantheon, I think, is one of the organizations that have ranked it. They've put him as number 1 because how could you not? How could you deny? His influence stretches cross-culturally, it stretches historically, and then also we've got the Quran. They've got the hadiths. We've got thousands of hadiths. We've got the Quran. This is the role model for the Muslims. You see what I mean? And it's a lot of men nowadays, I'll be honest, within the Muslim community and outside the Muslim community, we don't have those kinds of role models. The religious clergy are nothing like warriors, and the warriors are nothing like intellectuals or anything like that. And I cannot remember who had done this, who said this quote, but it was such a powerful one. It was an English.
It was either Aristotle or Socrates, I think, if it's the quote you're about to say.
No, let me say the quote first. He said something to the effect of, if you separate the fighting man from the thinking man, you have fools that fight, and you have cowards that think.
Yeah, completely. And I think it was there's a similar quote by either Socrates or Aristotle. Yeah, he said something very similar. He said, if your warriors and your thinking men are separate, then you nailed it.
Oh,
it's exactly the same. I think it's one of those two. But no, and you're completely right. It's completely true. And that is what the world is lacking now as a whole. And it's kind of insane when you look at how the world works. You have these thinkers sitting around in some government building sending warriors to die. And the warriors don't understand why. And the thinkers are too scared to go do it themselves. And it's kind of strange how whole society is even, limping along as it is. But I agree with you. I think that's the essence of a complete man. And when you were telling me about the adversaries, the adversities that were faced, and how he stood up and he fought against them and moved forward anyway. I think this is what God wants from us, from all of us. It doesn't matter what the adversary is. It doesn't matter how much you're hurt by it. You need to allow it to motivate you to push harder and show your power and show your resilience. And it's almost like, even before I became Islamic, I very much understood that when bad things happen to me, this is a lesson from the universe or from God or from the Creator to stand up and show who I am and who I can be, and to take all of the pain and anguish and disappointment and heartbreak and all of this and turn it into a force I can use for good and to make myself a better person. And I think if you don't approach life this way, that you're always going to struggle, because life is hard for everybody. It's going to be hard. It doesn't matter who you are or what you do. You need to be resilient to it. And I think that Islam is a fantastic way to understand exactly how to handle adversities and move forward. So,
well, I'm going to end in a second, but I just want to say one thing, which is that for those who don't know what Islam is a very, very basic religion. And it really is just a belief and worship in one God worthy of worship. As we've talked about today, it's not your desires, it's not the society, it's not the matrix of the LWO, the liberal world order. It's not any of those things. Really, it's just belief and worship in one God. And it is a belief in all of the messengers, Abraham, Moses, Jesus, and we believe the final messenger is Prophet Muhammad, who I've just described a second ago. And if someone just believes in those two things, actually, for all intents and purposes, they're a Muslim, and then all they have to do next is start praying 5 times a day, which is what Andrew Tate has done. It's been a pleasure having you on. I know you're a bit tired and fatigued, so I don't want to make it all long for you, and we'll get something to eat after this. I don't know how long we've been talking for. How long have we been speaking for? I think that's a good time.
Yeah, and we can do another one as well, especially as my journey continues and as I learn more and as I get more knowledgeable. I would love in a year or so, or 6-7 months, etc., we'd meet up again and do something.
Absolutely. And if you need anything from us, obviously, we're always being in communication with you. If you need resources, research, anything like that.
Perfect.
And you're part of the community. And one thing I want to say to the Muslim people is we must show loyalty and unity with Andrew Tate, in the sense that he is now one of our brothers, and it is absolutely unforgivable to say things that some of these feminist Muslims have been saying. And in fact, if anything, they need to be the ones who are refuted. Andrew Tate now is a brother of ours. His sins have been completely wiped away. And that really is that. Thank you so much, Andrew, for coming.
Thank you very much, man. And it's been educational and very interesting. Thank you, my friend. Thank you, brother.
Take care, man.
السلام عليكم. لا تنسوا الاعجاب بالفيديو والاشتراك في القناة تشجيعا لنا لنستمر بنشر المزيد إن شاء الله.